Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'll be trying to make sense of what we know about the battle for Donbass in Ukraine, tempered by the wisdom of people who have demonstrated themselves to know what they're talking about from a strategic point of view, as well as considering the other side to the pincer closing in on Putin, the economic realities coming his way. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So last week I talked about the strategic importance of Ukraine's strike on Moscow. For those who want to believe it was just a fire that got out of control, like Putin tried to say, please bear in mind that the risk of fire has been taken seriously by mariners for millennia. The risk of fire reaching munitions is especially bad. Big boom. Very bad on a ship at the best of times, let alone during a war. So mariners have known how to stop fires, which can't always be helped, from reaching their munitions dumps, which can for centuries. Naval ships' crews have known how to do this for hundreds of years. Are we really supposed to believe that the crew of the Russian Navy's flagship just forgot? Further doubt has to be cast on the idea that it was just a naval accident or even incompetence when Ukraine immediately took advantage. I described in last week's video how the striking of Moscow was strategically important for Ukraine if they wanted to take the fight into the east. Well, what has now happened? Almost straight away, Ukraine began what we might call the battle for Donbass. Dr. Mike Martin, an expert that I cited last week, with the various others in agreement as well, showed how Ukraine cut through Russia's supply lines east of Kharkiv. Russia seems to be in a bit of a bind. This is not to try and generate unrealistic expectations that the war is going Ukraine's way and victory is eventually assured. Doesn't necessarily seem to be the case. Russia is still in this, can still meet some military objectives, but it's tricky. An apparent push to get something to boast about for the May 9th celebrations in Russia is not helping. It puts me in mind of Julius Caesar's rise to power. When he attempted his coup, which we now know, of course, was ultimately successful. But the rulers of Rome at the time, they obviously resisted. Of course they did. They appointed an experienced general to take Caesar on, Pompey. He knew what he was doing. He trapped Caesar's army. The supply lines were cut. All he had to do was wait it out. Caesar was done for. That was it. He was knackered. But the rich Romans who were financing the campaign wanted a quick victory. They didn't like spending all this money. Get it over quickly, they said. So they insisted that Pompey went in for the kill now. He advised against it. Victory was assured his way. It was not, with a rash push to end the conflict more quickly than would be strategically sensible. But they insisted, they had the money, and that was it. Even then, money talks. Caesar, of course, then won the ensuing battle with some brilliant tactical moves, and Pompey had to flee to Egypt. The rest is history. We may have a similar situation in Ukraine. Putin may be insisting on a big victory in the next 2 weeks, which is not necessarily in line with sound military judgment. Russia doesn't have the forces for a major offensive. What forces it does have are demoralised. They've been beating a massive withdrawal across Ukraine, And yes, they may have obliterated civilian infrastructure and killed a lot of citizens, but what they've achieved in military terms is what? What have they achieved? They were pushed into Kiev and then had to carry out a massive withdrawal. They are now just in the east. Their flagship's been sunk. Doesn't matter whether you think that was due to an enemy strike or incompetence from their own side, it's gone, and with it the linchpin of their air defence. Experts have been calling on Ukraine to keep striking targets in Russian-held territory in order to keep them guessing. Talked about this last week. The more forces that they need to act in defence of territory they already control, the less they can commit to an offensive in territory they do not. And consider this. Because political decisions have been made here to override military decisions, if there are insufficient forces to mount an offensive, does that mean the offensive is called off? Not if the political will wants it very, very badly. Just find a way to do it, is what they may be saying to their generals. So they will launch the offensive with insufficient resources, lose badly, and then find themselves with even fewer resources than they had to start with no gains. The Pompeys of the Russian military must be shaking their heads right now. 2 days ago, Ukrainian media reported the defence minister saying that Ukraine's military intends to strike at the bridge linking Crimea with Russia. Now, I'm not entirely sure why you would announce it publicly. Maybe to get the benefits of Russia feeling the need to keep forces back for defence without the need to actually destroy the bridge. I suppose if the bridge actually is hit in the next week or so, then it also shows that Ukraine can strike at targets that they have publicly identified. It's a bit like saying, look, we're going to strike at this. We're telling you, you do your best to defend it. We're still going to take it down. There's nothing you can do about it, mate. It demonstrates the power to launch operations in their own land and be so confident that they don't even need to keep it secret. Of course, there wasn't necessarily any point in keeping it secret. It should be obvious to anyone that for Ukraine to seize the initiative, it will have to strike at strategically important targets. If I can work that out, and if military experts can work out what those strategic targets are and have been talking about them for a while, I'm pretty sure Russia's top brass will have it in mind as well. According to Dr. Martin, Ukraine is going to fight Russia by attacking their tail when they push out. He referenced footage of Ukraine doing just that on Thursday, destroying a Russian tank column. He also pointed out that Putin, and we've known this from the mainstream media as well, seems to have changed strategy again. Battle for Donbas only really began this week. He seems to be bored with it now. Not going well. So first he wanted to take Kiev. Didn't happen. He withdrew. Then he wanted Donbass, but Ukraine has taken the initiative. Russia doesn't have the forces to do this. Now he's apparently after the southern coast, but he can't storm that without air cover, and in case nobody has yet told Putin, the ship that they were using to keep the skies clear was sunk a week ago. Obviously, ordinary people in Russia won't be putting pressure on Putin because it's all going tits up. The control of information's fairly tight. It's proper 1984 stuff from what I can tell. He might just rock up on May the 9th and tell them he's completely taken over the whole of Europe and who's going to demand proof. But even the most powerful autocrat still needs a power base. Those around him know that things are going badly. They're losing money. Because remember, Putin didn't build his power based on ideology like Hitler. It was based on kleptocracy. He made his supporters incredibly rich at the cost to his people. That's how he rewards their loyalty, with wealth, not schemes for racial purity. That's not cutting any ice. Russia's economy is in trouble. Now, it may not look like it now. People may say, well, the ruble's recovered its value. People are bobbing along. Okay, yes, we've got tales that some people are at home. They're not at their work because their work doesn't exist anymore, but they're still being paid. You know, there are reports of severe shortage on the shelves, but people are still being paid and they can still get what they need. Yes, there are clear privations, but it's not hitting them really hard yet. Europe's still buying Russian oil and gas. But Russia became so corrupt that it has no real manufacturing base. It just imports things and then calls them Russian. Well, this is fine when you need to fiddle some paperwork, but you need to keep the imports coming in. But economic sanctions against Russia are a bit of a problem here. Russia uses almost exclusively Western machinery in its production of pretty much everything. Machines need parts to keep them going. They can't get those new parts now. Now, things might be manageable at the moment, but once their stockpiles are exhausted, and this could be in a few months, then those machines will start to fail, and then that's that. When this happens with machines needed for, say, food production, what then? By the end of the year, Europe should also not be buying Russian fuel, according to the latest plans. So here's the situation as I see it. First, Russia does not have the forces to make incursions. Ukraine are whittling them down. Every time they push out, they're taking their tail. Yes, Russia can shell more towns, and the devastation left in both human lives, mental scars and civilian infrastructure will be horrendous. But Russia is struggling to meet any serious military objectives. Secondly, machinery is going to fail, and they will struggle to get the parts needed to repair them. It's a bit like Brexit for us last year. We go along on stockpiles for a few months, and everyone's going, oh, we're okay, aren't we? We're getting by. Then those stockpiles run out. Boom, empty supermarket shelves. In our case, we hadn't actually invaded anyone, so we just had to pay more to buy what we needed in larger amounts. Russia isn't simply able to just pay more for those parts. Third, if this war drags on for the rest of the year, and Boris Johnson's already talking about it carrying on well into next year, not only will Russia not be able to get the parts it needs for its manufacturing, it will not be selling as much fuel. What then? Ask China to buy more and become a vassal state for their eastern neighbours? That's Putin's future for Russia, is it? Being China's bitch. Fourth, Putin don't look well. He was filmed talking to his defence minister a couple of days ago. Now you can see in the sped up footage, I'll link it in the description below, he did not look well. He was gripping the table for dear life throughout. Ordinarily, you look at someone like that and you say, do you know what? They're putting a lot of effort to keep a fart in. But I don't think the Russian president would go to that much trouble to keep a fart in when there's his defence minister there who's not going to say anything if he lets it rip. It reminded me of the scene of the orange one walking unsteadily out to the crowd, you know, when he was still recovering from COVID, trying to look strong, but actually looking like he might keel over at any moment. You know, this surely also puts Putin in a weaker position. Maybe a more desperate one as well, I suppose. But physically weaker, you know, could make it easier for Colonel Clumsy to do his work. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And until next time, I'll see you later.